It's 4 o'clock. I'm going to hit the record button. So we're recording it. We are recording it. Okay. Okay, it's Thursday, January 13th, 4 p.m., 2022. This is a meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. This meeting is being recorded. If any persons present are doing so, please advise the chair at this time. Thanks, Don. Anybody else? Oh. Okay, roll call. David Singer.
Here.
Chalkins is present. Mayor Wiedenegardner.
Here.
Chief Strahan. I know he's here.
I couldn't find the mute button.
Oh, okay. Liz Gilman. Carol Collins.
Here.
David Mascaratello.
I'm here.
Steve Draculich.
Here.
Present. Wonderful. Gene Wall.
Here.
Present. Amy McMahon.
Here.
Jen Stromstom.
Here.
Laura Phelps. Non-voting members. Arlo Warner.
Here.
Thank you. George Vanderlinder. Fernando Fury.
Here.
Thank you. Chief Haig. Peter MacGyver is absent and on vacation. Greg Diefendorf.
Here.
Neil Joyce.
Here.
Roger. Thought I saw
Here.
Roger. Katrina.
Here.
Dennis.
Here.
Adam.
Here.
And Ed Jarvis.
Here.
Thank you very much. First item on the agenda, the prior meeting minutes, and Peter MacGyver's on vacation and he's in Florida, and he sent me a note that he couldn't make his computer work to send them out to us. So we'll have to take up the meeting minutes in the next meeting. So the number 3 thing is the cost estimate, which just came in today and I sent out to all you folks. So I'd like Chico Ross to explain it to us. It did come in much lower and much more workable for us. So I'll turn it over to Katrina to give us an update and how we're doing.
Thank you, Butch. I'll start with where we were several weeks ago. We were still too high for the budget and wanted to take the time with the current design that I believe people have seen at this point, and we will eventually show it up on the screen. We wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to get this project and the documentation to a point where it was really in striking range. The budget restrictions that we know we've got on this project and the time constraints are paramount. We're well aware of this, and I think we've worked some really good strategies with the chief and the mayor and Butch talking with us about how to approach this. So if you have all seen today's estimate, I know you got it just today, so you probably have not had a chance to digest too much of it, but to briefly summarize the best I can, and Dennis, jump in here if I miss something. We are $1 million, just over $1 million lower than where we were a few weeks ago, without sacrificing major features and components of the building and programmatic spaces, workability of the building. We've really clamped down on everything that we can think of currently, and we still have some more ideas, but some of those further ideas do involve more investigation. I'll get to that in a moment. So one of the charges we were given previously is to get a breakdown of some of the very important parts of the project that we heard from the group are important to be in there, part of the project, but we needed from the estimator these dollar values. So looking at probably, I think page 3, no, page 3 of the estimate, where there's a summary of the entire project. You start with the building itself and then site work. That site work number at almost 1.5 million is too high to us. We think that there are more investigations that can be done. And I'll briefly say that we've been working to schedule the geotechnical engineer, the civil engineer, and our structural engineer has commented on places where we could work with DPW to have more test pits dug on the site to define the removals that need to come out of there in order for this building to have the proper foundations. The more definition we can give to the contractors, the better those numbers will be. So our intent is to, and we've arranged it at this point for next week. And Marlo, I know I sent you a plan with the markups from our civil and structural engineers. And we're trying to work with you to make that happen next week, either Wednesday or Thursday. And obviously, this is weather dependent and emergency dependent. We know it's completely up to the availability of the DPW. So with that being said, and looking at that almost 1.5 nugget, we want to drop that down. On that same page, you have a whole bunch of margins and adjustments. You see general conditions, bonds, insurances, overhead and profit, and all of those things add on quite a bit to those top numbers. We know that some of those are going to drop between now and then, between now and when we bid the project. For example, the design and estimating contingency will continue to get smaller as we go down the road because when we get that next estimate, there will be much more known. So that will help reduce the overall cost estimate
Yeah,
for the
let me
project.
add
Yeah, if you
something.
want to jump in there. Sure.
That number will get smaller, that 793, 850. However, some portion of that, whether it's 50% or more of that, will find its way back into the estimate itself. So while the number itself as a contingency gets smaller, as we get more detail, much of that contingency will get turned into line items. So it doesn't just magically go away.
Correct. It does not disappear all the way. Thank you for adding to that, Dennis. So with those large picture items in mind, the next page, which says page 1 of 1, but it's really the alternates page, we had these items broken out. We had 5 of them here. We wanted to see the cost of the epoxy flooring at the apparatus bays, which we know is a high priority for the chief. The metal roofing on the sloped roofs that are at the front of the building in lieu of asphalt. The museum space as an addition. The outbuildings behind, or I should say to the west side near Coombs, and turnout gear lockers. Now, these alternates may change based on some of the discussion that we hear today, but we knew that it was important for the committee to have a concept of what these dollar values are so that you understand the choices that are being made now to get us to our finish line in April. So just very briefly, one of the things you can see in that list is that the museum space is, in the eyes of the estimator, even less than the epoxy flooring. So just some interesting observations on that. And the outbuilding may become something that perhaps is out of a different budget, done slightly differently. we wanted to have these numbers in front of the group so that you can make informed decisions as we move forward. I guess that's what I generally wanted to say. We're not going to go line by line in here, but one of some of the changes we made were instead of having the BMS system for the HVAC controls, we had the estimator take that out, so it's a simpler situation with thermostats. I don't have the list of all the equipment, but they did take that into account in the revision that just happened this morning. And I know that there are other items. It might be good at this point to show the building design as it is right now so that people understand here's what we've got at the $12 million estimate.
Steve, go ahead.
Just a clarification on the alternates. These are add alternates or deduct alternates?
Add alternates is the way we are
So
approaching this.
this number is not in our budget. None of these numbers are in the budget.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Katrina or? Oh, you're muted, Mayor.
What I think we mean by that is that those numbers are not in that 12,909,000. Hello, let me try that again. 12,009,358.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
Any other questions? You're gonna have to say something because I can't see you all.
No questions from me, Butch, but could you just make sure that somebody send that to me? This is at Jarvis. I didn't get it
will,
for some reason.
I will. I missed you, both you and Marlo, and I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you.
I'll ship it out.
Katrina, this is David.
Yes.
Can you put the report up on the screen as well at some point?
Okay, Adam is the one who's got the documents at his fingertips, so if you give him a moment, I'm sure he can get it up there.
Just trying to forward it to,
That's great.
Well, yeah, he can't, yeah.
I think we all need to see this as we go forward.
yeah.
Page 3.
Right, he's got multiple things going on there, so. Okay, so,
Make it larger?
That's a new estimate.
right, this is the most recent as of this morning with some adjustments that we made yesterday.
All right,
This is the summation that I was referring to, so my apologies. I did not realize that not everyone had access to this yet.
and
Didn't
then
send it out. I just missed a couple of people. I apologize for that.
no, that's okay. I think it's better to have this out anyway.
Yeah, on the screen.
People want to see this, so let's show it.
Right.
This page is the exceptions.
Okay, it would be the next page,
I
Page,
think, isn't it?
the
Right.
alternates.
I mean the alternates. Yes, that's not
the
next
alternates.
page. Whatever page it is, I saw it.
Yeah,
Maybe it's the page
there it
before.
is.
Okay.
So,
Right, so here, again, it's just a very brief description. The pages following in the estimate give much more detail and breakdown to these. But we did try to put them in order as we had discussed with some of the group. And again, this may change based on today's discussion, and priorities, funding, et cetera. We really wanted to have the group understand that these are the discrete costs of these efforts and design portions.
Katrina, one clarification, please. Last meeting, we talked about things like reducing the glazing, lowering the walls. All of those things that we talked about at the last meeting are reflected in this $12 million number.
That is correct. And when Adam briefly had the model up on the screen, Adam, do we still have the elevation showing that dashed line of the previous height?
Mm.
Because we did have on the
do.
elevations of the design, the previous height was shown, and you could see that in some cases we had dropped significantly, maybe, and I don't have a scale on it. I don't have a number given to it. He's trying to get there. There we are.
Yeah.
Right. So particularly when you look at the bays, we dropped those wall heights significantly.
So this assumes that the radio and communications room is within the footprint of the building. It's
That
not
is
a bump out.
correct. Correct.
Right, okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
This is David again, and this that we're looking at, this is what the fire station will look like.
Yeah.
This is our design at this point that the estimate is based upon. Yes.
Yeah, it's because we looked at a lot of inside
Right.
stuff, but this is the first time I've seen the changes on the outside. So
Okay, so I think that might be a good point, Butch, if that makes sense for the group to kind of walk everyone through the changes since.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we went through them before, but we didn't go through them actually looking at a picture of how it changed.
Okay, so probably floor plan. So, which floor plan? Because we
Right.
started to break it up, it might be easier on the model. I don't know. Adam's the man behind the curtain right now.
Yeah, Sylvie, easier on the model. Just one moment. You guys get to see a little bit of the inner workings here. So this doesn't have the pretty colors that we saw previously, but it's still the same plan.
Right. So what we had done most recently to firm up the square footage was to take the radio room and push it into the bay spaces. So instead of bumping out with the two bays that are the ambulance bays, we have the spaces that are in between the two sets of bays are all support spaces and the mezzanine above, as it was before. But the vehicles that would have been in there would be out in an outbuilding on the southwest corner of the site. This helped us reduce the square footage of the building and get us to a point where our values for the budget are fitting much better. The central portion of the building was also squeezed a bit. We moved a conference room from the central area where the offices were to the main entrance. And this allows for probably better meeting space for people who are coming in just to meet with someone. They can do it without going all the way into the offices. The training room largely did not change. The bunk rooms largely did not change. Okay. I'm seeing it deeper on there. Yeah, we still have the bathrooms in the right places, a centralized mechanical electric room. The kitchen, instead of being part of that swath across the middle, was pulled in where the conference room area had been. Things shifted a little bit in there. In terms of flow for the space, that seems to work a bit more. We also were able to take the height across the building and work better with the grading so that there's only one ramp in the building. There's not two ramps and a bunch of steps or anything like that. There is one ramp. Coming down to the main door, it's about a 10-inch drop from the sidewalk. And we can do that with a slope that does not exceed 1 in 20, so it doesn't have to be a ramp with handrails and curbs, etc. But that allows us to set the building about 10 inches down from the sidewalk. And then within the building, the ramp that is in the dining day room area goes down another 30 inches in height. And at the bottom, the landing is allowed to have a slope of 1 in 50 as a maximum slope, but we get an extra 2 inches. So overall, from the sidewalk, you come down 10 inches and then another 32 inches in the building, and that is helping our civil engineer with his calculations of cut and fill, which were not, by the way, represented in this most recent estimate. They did not change their cut fill numbers because we didn't have a new calculation of that with this floor level change. Our civil engineer has said that they should have their cut and fill numbers next week, and they can only see it getting better in terms of those site work numbers. So I did want to put that in there along with the further investigations we anticipate doing next week.
We also got rid of the patio there.
Yes, there were some things that we needed to reduce some of the costs, and perhaps these are items that happen outside the project budget as we have it defined currently. Things like the patio, the memorial area up front. There is nothing in the project at this point. There will be signage on the building. That's not left out, but it's not a full memorial space with pavers and special lighting, etc. That is not included in this estimate.
And can you show on the site where the outbuilding is contemplated to be and what it is?
I can. Let me just figure out where I can.
And Dennis, that is included in this price point?
No, that was the 205.
Okay, that's an addition. All right.
That's one of the alternates.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure that, again, the group had the ideas or the numbers in front of them to understand the cost involved with all of the parts and pieces so that you can make an informed decision. I'm trying to see at the very end of the estimate, and I know we've got the outbuilding showing up on the screen. That's meant to be a very simple outbuilding, and I'm looking at the way that it's shown here in the estimate. Slab on grade. EFIS walls. Okay, an exterior insulation finish system. I probably could get that number to come down a little bit more. Very simple roof slope. Couple of overhead doors. He's got, or they've got metal stud walls. So we think that even this number might be able to come down, but this is an interesting particular piece in this project that if there were grant monies available for a separate outbuilding of some kind, that's something to kind of put on the, let's think about it. I don't know what the resources are exactly. Someone in our office had done a little bit of research and looked at prefab buildings. I've got something from Nucor. That's one of the brands that's out there for this type of outbuilding. And we know that it needs heat. We know that it needs to at least have the two vehicles in there. And even in our last discussion, the chief was saying, well, if we can make it 3, let's make it 3. We know that something is going to have to go in there. We really needed to get the number first so that you can think about these things and understand what, if any additional funding we can really foresee for the project.
So are the alternatives that you might find other than what you have there, that must be the 195, 66 number, lower than that?
I'm thinking that we could get some of that to come down based on the the description that the estimator put in there, we gave them very basic instructions relative to that.
Mhm.
That one's a little bit harder to give a kind of a number for because it involves more than just a single component or a single system.
Yeah.
But I think they took their best shot at it, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay.
Any other question of the design team on the revised cost estimate? And I can't see, so you have to say something.
Yeah, can you, oh, don't go away.
Oh, there you go.
Can you please show now the outside of the fire station again?
Sure thing.
Just want everybody to see what we're talking about.
Right.
Right. So the main entrance, if you focus in on there, Adam,
That's
the main entrance
big here.
has an arched opening in the masonry, and we still have a nice steep roof that a lot of the committee really enjoyed seeing the last time we had a presentation. The training room is to the right there where you see those squares, and these are very simple masonry embellishments that are easy to construct and within the and easily within budget. When we come and turn the corner, and I think we go down the page. Yes. Okay. The idea of the end wall of that training room with the window and the arched opening is that it's the same arched opening that's at the main entrance. So you get a repeat of elements and roof slopes that starts to read around the building. We've simplified the windows and the window openings so that I think we have maybe 5 window types at this point. Again, looking at all kinds of ways that we can simplify, but still still achieve the look and the feel that we've been presenting to the committee.
Well, I think one of the other things too, we're already looking at it, you see those gutters coming off the roof. What we may end up doing is we may have the roof come down and drip onto a French drain. And then direct the water from the French drain, thereby eliminating gutters, downspouts, and underground piping. And we're pretty sure that's going to be a fairly significant saving also.
Yes, and I'll say I don't know that that was reflected in the estimate. I'd have to double
was
check.
not.
Okay, so I think in the estimate they were still showing gutters, which we are trying to eliminate as we keep moving forward. And I do want to say that as a design team, we're still considering more options to keep reducing the budget as much as we can, but we need to move forward in investigating those designs. That's what design development, the phase that we are in, is all about. And I think, as Adam's showing the kind of model view from the different angles of the street, you can see that it's still largely looking the same as it did before. We have simplified, 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 but kept the flavor and the materials where you have told us as a committee that you want to go.
Katrina, the one thing that doesn't show up in the renderings is the cupola. Can you just touch on what the intended reuse of the salvage cupola is?
Okay, so and Adam is bringing it up there. So on the site plan to the right is our main street and sidewalk. The cupola would be in front of the new building on some kind of base. I'm assuming at this point something very simple, and it would not be in the way of the museum edition. And I do want to describe the museum edition to you, even though it's not shown in the other drawings. It is of the size where you can have your long apparatus, antique apparatus in there, and a good number of the pieces that we know are right now taking up space elsewhere but it also still performs as a place that you can roll the vehicles out the front. The front would have doors that swing open towards Main Street. And the vehicles can be rolled out that way and used in parades or what have you, and then rolled back in. The doorway that you see kind of right under the word museum, that is an exit pathway for the people in the training room and for the office area. So if that addition were built, the double doors that swing out towards the Main Street would function also as exit pathway. There's enough room for you to walk past the antique apparatus.
Mhm.
But part of the goal with that design was that essentially if the addition were affordable, that it was essentially the same construction just marched along even further, and it would continue to have that same arched window opening at the end so that people could see the vehicles, the other mementos that everyone wants to see displayed.
That museum addition could be added at any time, is that correct?
Yes,
Post-construction of the entire firehouse.
it could. It would make most sense for the contractor to do it during construction, as it would, as I was describing, it would be the same wall system and truss over the top as what is currently marching along there. But that's something we don't know that can be afforded yet.
The one thing I would say, Mayor, is if you did it down the road, forgetting escalation, just because the contractor would have to undo some existing construction, it would not be the 135. I'm sure it would be more than that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for the design?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
I noticed that in some of the estimates, a lot of the commercial equipment has been removed with no indication anywhere about the cost of that. And I am wondering why that isn't including as up in the options column, a reflection on the cost of that equipment not being in there. So i.e., if, we're making decisions on this, we've got some pretty big commercial equipment things that have been left out. And I think it should be reflected in somewhere on what that cost of leaving that equipment out is.
If I may, Butch, can I follow up with your question, Chief? Was that included, I guess I'd ask the architects, in the estimate that we got a couple of weeks ago? I think the 13 million, where that was the equipment the chief is talking about included in that estimate? Thank you.
No, actually, that's included in Neil's estimate. That should be under the FF&E, Neil, or at least some of it should be.
Yeah, good amount.
Okay. Just looking for clarification. Thank you.
So that is my question as well. It is part of FF&E.
We had $615,000 in the budget for the FF&E for the entire building.
Okay.
That was not thought down to the last piece of furniture and whatnot. It was more
Right.
of a general plug for a building of this size.
Bob,
I didn't
would
realize
you-
that was in there. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
But I wonder if you would explain to members of the committee and others what you mean by commercial equipment, please.
Sure. So there is certain pieces of equipment that are of a commercial nature, such as the washer and extractor, fitness equipment, food preparation equipment, and then obviously some minor things like projection screens and projectors that are listed here that are excluded. But now I understand that that's in a different spot. So thank you.
Okay.
David M., you got a question?
Yes, I had a couple questions, but I can ask one at a time so I don't hog all the time. Can the reduction in the height of the roofing, especially at the bay areas, can you explain how that affects the technically the airflow and also like maintaining the trucks and being able to extend the trucks inside and do everything they have to do inside so they don't have to do anything outside? Are those things affected by the decrease in the roof? And how is the airflow affected by the decrease of the roof in the bay areas?
Okay, Dennis, I'm going to try to do this one, and if I miss something, let me know. In terms of the decrease in height and the airflow will not largely change. We will still have high bay fans at the ceiling level to help the air circulation in there. The heating system has not changed. We're still talking about the in-floor radiant heat. The height that we had before was largely driven by having a lot of the glass and the glazing systems that were too expensive, honestly, for the budget that we've got. So we were able to reduce things, and at this point, if we wanted to, we do have the overhead doors have a lot of glazing in them, so there's a lot of natural light that way. If we wanted to, at no significant increase in cost, there could be some glass block in certain places around the bay to add additional natural lighting in there. But right now, to get the picture out to the estimator, they can understand here this is a block wall, here's an overhead door. The height is such still, and Adam, I think we still have it at a place where the height is such that the cabs of the vehicles can be tipped as they need to be. If they need to be tipped to access something underneath the cab, they can still do that. That was a particular request of the chief, and I know he's on a phone call right now, so he's not hearing me. um, so the height does allow that at this point.
What it does not allow, David, is to put in lifts to actually lift the truck up and work underneath it. That particular thing has gone away. We don't have the height for that anymore.
You're muted.
Okay, I'd like to know how that affects the maintenance of the trucks, and obviously that has to be done outside now, I would think. And is that, or are there things that have to be done to maintain the trucks and lift them up to clean them or anything like that? So, I'd like to have a little discussion about if they, what is the outcome of them not being able to lift the trucks up inside the bays? Assuming it all has to be done outside outside in the parking lot, right?
Okay, I do want to ask the chief to answer some part of that. I will address the cleaning of the vehicles. Those can be done entirely inside the bays. But when you ask the question of the maintenance of the vehicles, we do want to be careful that this is not a maintenance garage at this time. That is not what it has been designed as. And when you say outside the building, you could mean one of two things, and I will just want to ask you to be clear: outside the property at some other site versus out on the driveway of this property.
I just wanted to understand with the heights shrinking down, how it affects overall the function of maintaining the vehicles, and if there's going to have to be, things that we have to take off the property and do, as opposed to we could have done them in the bays because there was more height. That's all I'm asking is, are there things that have to be looked at to do elsewhere because the heights are being decreased? That's all.
I think the short answer, Dave, would be it's really no different than what they're doing now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to answer that, Dave. The reason why I had asked for that in the first place was our DPW maintains our trucks and they do a great job. And any major repairs are done at the DPW garage where they have a lift. The capability of being able to have a set of lifts at the firehouse and the height is about future expansion and future opportunities that we currently don't have. And so Neil is right in saying that we currently don't have that opportunity to do now, but we could in the future. My firefighters are not mechanics, and so we would not do big mechanical work at the fire station. We have the DPW that does that. They are great at it. They are certified at it. What we were looking at was basic maintenance capability in regards to if I have a contractor that has to come and get underneath the truck, we could lift it safely for them. When we put chains on the truck, it's easier than using a big jack to put the chains on the truck. When we have minor repairs, often it's easier for the mechanics from the DPW to come to the firehouse and do the repairs right on site versus us taking an engine out of service to run it down to the yard. So it was about future opportunities. But Neil is right. We currently don't have that, and that would have been a new option for us to have down the road. There is no intention for us to go away from the DPW maintaining. This was just to enhance what is already currently happening.
Okay, great. So basically, the daily operation of the apparatus isn't going to be affected by lowering the roof line, is what I'm hearing.
At the current time, that is correct. However, who's to say that the DPW will always be maintaining the apparatus? If the fire department got to the point where we needed our own mechanic for whatever reason, this is going to limit your opportunities to do that. We certainly have no intention of doing that, and things could change when I'm no longer the fire chief or whatever. This would just give us more opportunities down the road, but it currently does not affect our current operations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions on cost estimate, design work?
Yeah, I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
So if the committee's to understand this, a couple of weeks ago, we had before us a estimate of, I think the number was 3 million. Is that the right number?
13.
13.
I'm sorry, 13. I'm talking about the difference. 13 million. And we're now down to 12. And within the million that we've saved are these items that add up to $683,000. The alternate requests. Right? So within the million that we've saved is 683,000 that's on the page that has the five alternate the 5 alternate items, correct?
Well, I have to modify that, Dennis. The metal roofing, I don't believe was in the previous estimate. I think that was shingles. I could be wrong, and that's
No,
something.
You are correct.
That's
It was
correct.
never there. You are correct.
And I believe the epoxy flooring was in the previous.
Was in the previous.
I think so.
It was.
So the metal roofing would have made the 13 million more expensive.
Yes.
By how much?
By that amount.
$131,000.
Oh, that is the difference. Okay.
Yes.
Whoa. All right. That's a little bit of a curveball. Okay. So then what I was going to say is that then the amount of money you saved, we all saved by shrinking and doing the things that we just talked about, is the difference between 13.2 million and 11.6 million. 12.6 million, because you're adding 600,000 of what we were going to save is in this list. One of those things wasn't in the 13 million. So you were able to bring down the cost of the fire station by something like $700,000 before we got to these items, sounds like.
That's approximate. I think you are correct in that nature, and keeping in mind that on all of these, you have those margins and adjustments.
No, I understand that you're feeling more optimistic that these numbers are too high, but let's assume that we got to work with what we're going to work with. So I lost my thought. So the fire station now, except for the metal roof and the floor, the fire station now at 12 million is the minimum cost for the kind of fire station that we want to have all the general support systems, things that we find necessary. So this is like the baseline, this is the baseline fire station. Is that fair to say?
I would say so.
Chief? I know you want to add back in the roof and the floor, but at 12 million,
Yeah, it's the very baseline fire station.
okay, that's important because I want us to all understand that, you know, that's where we're at. We're at the baseline, BASELINE. Okay. So I just want to understand that. So when we start talking about how we're going to deal with this, then we at least understand that the 12 million plus maybe some of these alternates, if we think that they're still important, is how we're going to have to proceed. Taking that amount, subtracting, you know, and seeing where we could get the funding for that extra money.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Yes, David M.
Can you talk a little bit more about the site work? 1.445 million. Was that the amount that was in the original estimate? And what does that involve? Is that just work that's being done in the groundwork and foundation work?
A lot of it is, and I'm just trying to get into the estimate to the right pages where it describes the
Dave,
components of that.
Is it in the
Generally speaking, earthwork is cuts and fills on the site, pavement and improvements to the site, landscaping, and all project utilities outside of the building envelope.
That includes the generator.
But it would not include the foundations itself.
In
Correct.
this estimate, it's actually higher than in the previous one.
Is it broken? I haven't looked through this whole packet. I've been looking through it while we're speaking. Is it broken down in this? Is the 1.4 broken down in this package we just
It is.
received? What page
It
is
is.
that on?
I believe it's in the PDF of itself, the 23rd page of 35 pages in the PDF.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm looking now. It's on page 23.
Of the PDF. The page itself says page 20 of 32.
Oh, 20. Okay. All right.
So it is showing,
Right.
you know, precast concrete bollards, electrical distribution, the generator, transformer, earthworks, and this is in the clearing, bulk cut, and so forth. I did see that between the last estimate that we had and this one, the estimator did not change their cut and fill numbers. Where you're looking at this page where it says cut and dispose of uncontrolled fill, assumes 3-foot average depth across the admin side and 6-foot of removals at the base. They did not change those between the 13 million estimate and the 12 million estimate. This is where we are, you know, trying to work with DPW and our engineers to better define what needs to come out, because we believe, based on our change to how the internal levels of the building have been now made, that we have improved this condition. That's what our engineers are telling us. It's one better step down or ramp down, and that will reduce the amount of fill that they need to bring in. In fact, yesterday during our design call, they were saying that they had to look at shallower stormwater retention components, because we're assuming that bedrock depth and water table are at a certain point based on previous test pits and borings, and they need to have these components work within a certain level below grade. So we know that we're having a positive effect with our design on these numbers, and they should come down.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot in this section. So thank you for pointing out what page it's on. I'd like to go through it a little more, in a little more detail. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think you can't see her, but I think Gene Wall had a question.
Yes, I wanted to clear up my thinking about the alternates. My understanding is that the contractor who bids on this contract will bid separately on each of the alternates. And that you have to take them in the order that you've got them listed. If we can afford them when the basic contract price comes in, is that correct?
Neil?
Oh, you were muted, Neil.
Yeah.
Still can't hear.
Volume.
Not muted.
Oh, okay. We just
Okay.
couldn't hear you at
Speak
first.
out.
Excuse me. Yes. Sorry. That is the intent, Gene. They have to be identified. We will get an additive price, presumably for the scope of work of each of the alternates, and they must be taken in the order that they are listed on the bid form.
So my question is this really the order in which the chief wants these things? I mean, it looks to me like the outbuilding would be more important than the metal roofing, just as,
That was just the estimator listing them in random order.
oh,
I
okay.
believe they are listed in the, at least alternate 1 and alternate 2 are listed in the order that the chief would prefer them to be.
Priorities, correct.
The other 3, I don't know. Yes, alternate 4 could move to alternate 3. Alternate 5 could become alternate 4. Museum space would become 5. I mean, those things could happen, but 1 and 2 are very important. Chief can explain that, or if he isn't able to come back, I can.
Okay, and I do want to add something to let the committee know this is not the last estimate we will have on the project. We will still have another estimate before this project goes out to bid. So before it goes out to bid, we will have hopefully a better outlook on where pricing is, and that may color the decision as to whether these are the correct alternates to have, or whether the as the chief really does want that epoxy floor, if that becomes part of the base bid, then alternate number 1 becomes the metal roofing. So those are decisions I think down the road. The idea right now is for us to have the best understanding, for us to keep moving forward, and for the committee to be thinking about what is the priority.
Oh, sorry, Jane, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jane.
Okay, my other question is, why would it be less expensive to do things like use hardy board on the exterior and not have a metal roof? Because I would rather have the money spent on the things that they need on the inside than the public view of the exterior of the building. Are you looking at that too?
We did look at the hardy board answer, if I may try to answer Jean first. We did look at the hardy board. It was more expensive than the masonry.
And that's referring to the system as a whole, needing to do that to meet today's standards in commercial construction, not just that one material, but using that material in the system is more expensive.
Right, with all of the components that make up the exterior wall and the insulated envelope.
And so there's nothing that is less expensive for the exterior other than the metal roof versus asphalt.
We're still looking at a few items, but this is the best we could get for the estimator to have a number for you to look at. We know our time constraints. We're doing our best. We are still looking at further definition of, as we said, the site removals, the controlled fill, the uncontrolled fill. But we are looking at a potential product and system for the exterior walls at the apparatus base that's more of a sandwich all in one component that could reduce a foundation thickness and further reduce the cost. We are looking at that now. But we've gotten to this point because we needed to have this for you.
I think it's probably important for the chief to explain the importance of the epoxy floor and the metal roof. They are not design wannabe. You know, they have a function. It's critical.
Sure, I'll address that. So the number one priority for me is definitely the flooring in the apparatus bay. You're talking specifically about durability of the concrete floor and the safety of the firefighters. A typical polished concrete floor doesn't look as nice, first of all, but more importantly, is not as slip resistant as the epoxy finish. The way that the epoxy is done, it provides a really more of a non-slip surface. In our line of work, a wet apparatus floor gets slippery, and so the epoxy floor is primarily for firefighter safety. The metal roof, I've gone back and forth with the metal roof. You know, the first thing with the metal asphalt roof versus the metal roof is, you know, in 30 years, the fire chief then is going to have to worry about the roof versus not with the metal roof. You know, part of me says, I'm not going to be here in 30 years, but the reality is that I don't want to set the department up in the future as well. The asphalt shingles that we're talking about are between, Kat, you can tell me it's 20 or 30 years to 20 years.
Between 20 and 30, depending on the manufacturer.
So that's the first part. The second part is durability. The metal roof that is being installed is over the conference room. It's also the emergency operations center for the city. And a metal roof has more durability than a shingle roof. So that is one of the big concerns about that. I have gone back and forth with the priority, and I'm not entirely sold on the priority list as the asphalt versus metal versus the outbuilding, because one affects durability and long term, and the other one affects operations here and now. That's the importance for me. Why I'd like to see us try to get that restored if we can at all possible.
Yes, Gene.
The Planning and Construction Committee has a great resource in Carol Collins, who has done dashboards of what the expenses are going to be for the future. And the goal of our committee is to have, if a roof needs to be replaced, have that in our list of things that we need money for, so that we can keep the mayor always alerted to future expenses that have to be done, so that it won't be like this, oh no, we don't have the money for a roof, let the roof leak. Now, you and I will both be gone by the time your roof needs to be,
Me too.
or I will anyway, replaced. But these dashboards should be ongoing, and the city should be able to manage the expenses of any replacements if we can get it all to the point where we're working with knowledge and not with maybe someday we need a new roof.
I should go. I forgot to mention too the epoxy floor. We went to some fire stations that didn't put the epoxy floor in initially, and then 10 to 15 years later, they were spending 10 times as much to put the floor in later. So it just doesn't make any sense about that one. I just
Right,
didn't
and
want to caveat that too.
I get the epoxy floor, and that should, if that's your top priority, that should either be part of the expense of the fire station or your top priority. I'm not arguing, I'm just saying that sometimes we have to give up the best thing in the world for the money that we don't have. And other times we can have everything we want because we're rich. We're not rich.
Mhm.
Just
Yes,
saying.
Mary, you had a question? Comment?
When we discussed with the chief the metal roofing, particularly where it's going, what's been left out of this discussion, which is what was in the previous discussion that was important, struck me as important, is in terms of durability. If this building were located someplace else in Greenfield, perhaps that would be fine.
Right.
But it is at the top of that hill on the west side of Greenfield, where we know when the wind comes down that hill, up Main Street, and could, in fact, severely, at any point in time, a year after the building was built, wreak havoc on a asphalt shingle roof in that particular location. I'm not understand. I don't believe that metal roofing, if I understood this correctly, both then and today, the metal roofing is not all over every roof in the building, just that particular section of the building.
Correct, just the trussed areas of the
Yeah,
roof, yes.
So, Chief, have you changed your mind about that as an important factor of having the metal roof, or is that part of what you're still considering?
Mayor, there's so much with this, having alternatives at all is challenging. No, I still think, and that's what I meant by durability,
Yeah,
was
okay.
I don't think it's as a durable roof as a metal roof. And I say that because, again, it's right over the emergency operations center, which in an event cannot go down.
Yeah, so I was actually going to be prepared today to suggest and then certainly have a discussion. It can happen now unless we need to move on some other things. I was prepared to say that we really should put alternate 1 and alternate 2 because I thought they were of primary importance. I didn't necessarily think that the outbuilding was as important, but so I'm not suggesting that it isn't. I'm suggesting that I was prepared today to say that the 2 alternates actually need to be part of the budget of the construction. So that puts us at 12 million, if I've done my math correct. That's always subject to question, even with a calculator. That puts us at 12,302,302. So $12,302,302, which to me is still a significant savings over the 13.
Right. Mary, you want to make a motion to that effect, to move those out of contingency over to the
I'm
main?
happy to say so moved, so we can discuss it now if the rest of the people don't have other questions or other things that they want to discuss.
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, now for discussion on that point. I certainly agree with it. I think they're that important. In doing the building, not as add-ons. I think they should be prioritized within the construction of the building. Yes, Jane.
The way we handled the alternates at the library was that those things that the architect and the project manager thought might come in lower to entice us to take a contract were the things that they used as the alternates. I don't know if there's give in the epoxy floor or the metal roof, but if those are important, I have no objection to it. I just am looking for things that maybe somebody would, in bidding for the building, would give a deal on the alternates, and then we could add them in. It was a difficult thing to do because the top alternate that we had was a huge energy saving of the window package. But I'm not the architect. I don't know what things that, and it came out great, but I don't know what things are negotiable. So I back off on that part of it. I mean, I want the chief to have a fire station that functions. That's my goal.
Ed? You're muted.
Thought I hit the button. I guess I didn't hit it hard enough. Yeah, I'd like to speak to the epoxy floor. I think the epoxy floor is a very important item. My right knee can justify and speak to that because I blew my right knee off getting off of a wet fire truck on a cement floor. So from a safety standpoint, and probably a cost state point, with your people being out on IOD, collecting a paycheck, paying their medical bills. I just think the epoxy floor is a smart thing to be added at this time to the cost of the budget. And it's a safety item, and it's a no-brainer to me. Just my 2 cents, and my right knee to this day will contest to the importance of the epoxy floor.
Then we need one in City Hall too, because
Right.
not only did my shoulder suffer, my right
There you go.
thinking
Any
it's a
other,
pretty good idea for the second floor.
any other comments on that? I'd just like to ask Neil to just go over the budget with us again, and how we get there and what happens if we don't get there. And we've included this in a design that we have authorized. And as a supplement to that, if you could just reference when we would have to put the supplemental list together. When does that have to be done if we're locked into it?
By supplemental list, Butch, do you mean
The add-ons, the
the
add-ons.
alternates?
Yeah, the alternates.
Okay, I'll take that one first.
That's
The
easy.
alternates, yeah, that's low hanging fruit, Butch.
Yeah.
The alternates have to be identified in the bid documents.
Okay.
Normally, that is a discussion that we have with the committee 30 days before the bids go out to be made public. And it's just it gives the architect time to make sure that they coordinate the drawings, the numbering, and the bid form so that they're all on the same page and they ask for the same scope in the same order. So
that would be April-ish.
Would be April-ish that we would have to decide.
Now to the difficult question.
Sure. So our original project was based on a $17 million budget. And that $17 million budget was based on $10.1 million in construction cost. There were a lot of other items that went into the 17 million, the professional fees and all that other stuff, contingency. And for the most part, that stuff doesn't change. So if we were to increase our construction estimate to $12.3 million, and let me stop for a second. I always like to include 5% contingency on the amount of construction for anything from owner requested changes to unforeseen conditions to any type of change order that would occur during construction. So at $12.3 million, that translates to $615,000 in contingency. At $17 million, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get this right.
What was the contingency number again?
So in our most recent budget, we have $927,000 in contingency. So what I did was I sort of reworked our numbers based on only 5% in cost. And when I did that, our contingency number came down to 615,000, and I transferred the 300,000+ back into the construction budget. So that got us up to about 10 million, 10.5 million in that range. So that leaves us, really speaking, $1.3 million short, if my math is right, right? We gotta go from 10.5 to 12.3. So that's $1.8 million
1.7.
and change.
1.7. So,
So we're 1.7 short is what you're saying, Neil.
Yes.
right.
Okay.
So maybe David Singer, because he's worked all week on this with the mayor and me and Neil, can explain how we might get that 1.7 and how we think we can get somewhere near that number.
No, that I don't have the answer to. I have some suggestions, which we're all gonna work out. So I want to just stick with something that Jean said before we go talking about it, because I think Jean's onto something and I don't think we're hearing her properly. And I need some help from Neil for this. I think Jean's saying that she supports the floor and the roof. And the question is, do we include it in the 12.3, in which case we have to come up with the extra $0.7 million? Or do we have it as an alternate, in which case, through someone's experience in this, and Jean has one experience and maybe Neil has more, that to do it that way, it's more likely that the cost of it will come down because it'll be considered to be something that's kind of pulled into the original, to the bid that we're getting on the main project. So we don't really have to answer that question now, I don't think, because we're going to deal with the alternates sometime in April. But I think that's what she's saying, is that the process that we use to line this up, either making it the base amount or putting it outside of the base amount, may save us money. Neil, is that something that we should think about, or is it just that we'll think of, that's a for April discussion?
I believe that both of the alternates that we've talked about, either the metal roof or the epoxy floor, are largely standalone costs. They're not really dependent on other trades. They're pretty isolated unto themselves. So I don't know that there's a lot of economy by carrying them one way or the other. I think we're going to get the same number for epoxy floors, whether it's in the bid or whether it's outside of the bid as an alternate. I mean, we may get a sharper pencil because it's definitely in the scope, as opposed to an alternate that we buy if we have funding. So maybe we get a better price. It's really, really difficult to speculate. But
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's good. I mean, Jean was bringing her experience. You have different experience. You have a broader experience. I just wanted Jean to hear the final
David,
answer.
David, before you, David,
Yes.
very important. When you're talking about alternates, yes, putting them in order can wait till April, but if they're going to be in or out of the project, there's no way we can wait till April. If something's going to be in the project, we need to know that probably no later than February.
Okay.
But that creates immense amount of difficulty for us.
All right. Well, I was
Yes,
going to
thank
ask those two
Thank you,
things.
Dennis.
All right, that's fine. So then there is a motion on the table, and I don't know, I mean, we'll leave it as the motion, but so I had talked to Neil about, squishing this money out of the budget so that he was up to now $10.5 million is available. And if we're going to vote yes on the roof and the floor, then it's going to be $12.3 million. So we're going to be off by that 1.7. I'd like to turn the next thing over to the mayor. I mean, I think our funding sources are either the mayor has access as an executive to money. The city council is willing to help us fill the gap. We can look at our budget, do things like, again, it would mean kicking the can down the road, but we could look at FF&E, put that money into construction, and then go to the city council in a year and a half and ask them for that money back because they'll have time to put it into their budget. I think it's a little late for fundraising as a way to go, at least to go to bid. And I'm not being that's not a sarcastic comment. So I think that's where we're at. On the other side, so I believe that today, unless the mayor has some other information or the committee feels reluctant, that we should vote to send Dennis and his crew moving forward to design this fire station. And if we vote for the roof and the floor, to design the fire station with that, knowing that we're $700,000 short, because they have to get started, because if we don't get started, we know we're gonna be spending $45,000 to $50,000 at the end to pay for the lease payments if we're late. So I'm gonna divide it into two parts. One part is to make this decision, that's a broad brush decision, go, because we wanna save the money at the end. We really have no choice, I don't think. The other is to keep circling back as Dennis and Katrina and the crew begin to firm up the numbers and begin to tell us what really this is gonna cost beyond the estimates, which we're hopeful will be a shrinking number. And at the point that we learn the shrinking number, we can decide what we're gonna do about the extra 700,000, maybe it's 500,000, maybe it's 400,000. And we can decide that within the next month or so, if I understand the process. So I'm saying it as my understanding of the process. This is what I recommend the committee do. Doesn't mean that we won't circle back and back to make sure that we can bring it down even to 11.5 million if we could actually build it for that the way that the chief is hoping we will. But right now, the worst case scenario is if we're going to do all this stuff based on the estimators, it's 12.3, and it's actually 0.8 million. And we have 11.5. So I'll turn this over to the mayor to talk about what she thinks she can do to help fill that gap. And then as a committee, we can decide, how we're going to go forward.
I would just ask Neil first, if we take those two alternates out, what budget point are we talking about?
12.
If we took those two alternates out, we'd be at 12, right about 12 million even.
12 million even.
And that would be about $1.5 million short.
Right. So if we took FF&E and then the mayor maybe could speak to what she's willing to do, see how close we can get to that price point.
I don't understand why we're taking the alternates out. The motion on the floor has the alternates.
It's just discussion. It's just for discussion. What would be the difference?
Let me put it this way.
Yes, Mayor.
I have the ability to answer David's question, but I want to know what we're paying for this building whenever we decide to vote on it, which I am sort of thinking, according to David, he would like to see us do now so we can give it to Dennis and he can run with it.
Correct.
So if we're paying 12 million, that's one thing. But I didn't hear or if we're paying 12.3, what is the number that right now, if I understood correctly, that 1.7 million short is on a building that already has the epoxy flooring and the metal roof as part of the building, what we would turn over to Pacheco Ross to design to. Am I correct, Neil?
With the alternates, the cost of the building would be just over 12.3 million.
That is correct.
Without the alternates, it would be just over 12 million.
That is correct.
Was that what you were asking?
Not exactly, but
No, I think the mayor I think before the mayor answers her question, the question I've asked her is if she's going to be able to produce funds through her executive branch, then she'd like to know what we decide is going to be the cost of the building so she could realistically explain where that extra 0.8 million might come from or 1.8 million might come from. Is that fair to say, Mayor?
that is correct, but how did we get an extra $100,000 in there?
Well, because
I thought it was 1.7.
it was a myth.
Oh, okay. So somewhere between
Until the meeting's over, it's all myth.
Okay,
So it's
it's somewhere
1.8.
between 1.7 and 1.8.
11.5 plus 3.3, 13.3 minus 12.5, yeah, all right, 0.8. 1.8.
Right. So, I guess my only other question would be of Neil. What happens if we vote a budget that we don't really have and authorize you to, or, yeah, you to go out to bid?
No, we can't do that.
Right,
By
exactly.
the way, I did notice that Liz Gilman is on this meeting right now, and I don't know how much of this information financing stuff she's caught, but if she needs to speak and you want her to speak, I'm happy to have her do that as part of this discussion.
Well, she might be helpful to you, Mayor, when you share with us your.
Yeah.
insights.
So
Right,
I have the ability to give the fire station construction, or the fire station, $1.5 million out of ARPA money. So I think I have said all along that that is at least where 1.5 of it can come from. And that section of the ARPA is the,
That includes.
I don't want to get into the weeds terribly here, but it's from lost revenue, how we calculate lost revenue.
okay, so if you added 1.5, Neil, what
Mayor,
would our
that-
budget
That
be?
one, that 1.5,
16.5.
Sorry, what?
I'm sorry, I have to jump in because of that 1.5, $500,000 is already accounting
Committed.
for the
Right.
library 500,000. So you're really at 16.5.
Yeah.
But let's say it the way everybody can understand it.
Right, so what would we have for construction?
The 1.5 the mayor's talking about, $500,000 is already baked into the 17 million. So Mayor, and so if everybody appreciates that that's the case, now Mayor, you're willing to add another $1 million to deal with.
That is correct.
Right. So how much
that
money,
is-
Neil, would that be for construction? We need a construction cost here.
Yes. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's to
That
get us
would-
the fire station that we need.
that would take us to
11.1.
0.5.
11.5 million.
So now we're 0.8 off, or we're 0.5 off, depending on what we want to do about adding the structure, the alternates.
Right,
And again, I'm not sure that if we add the alternates today, that we don't, unless Dennis tells me I'm wrong, that we don't have an opportunity to revisit that. But at least we're moving Dennis in the direction that needs to be, because we're going to come back to this more and more and more to figure out what the real costs are. So it's not like this is our last time. Yes, Mayor.
So I want to take this conversation and this money discussion in context with something that Katrina mentioned very early on, and mentioned it more than once. And that is that this is an estimate, and I'm not quarreling with it. I'm going to take it as pretty much gospel. But then they say over time there may be some savings. Now, as you go forward, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Pacheco Ross and Katrina, but you said that with some conviction, and I assume it's based on experience. So are we talking, 1.5 million short, in savings? No, I think you're talking more in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings. But whatever it is, it frees up money for something else within whatever construction budget we have set aside. So it lessens the pain, I guess, is part of what I'm saying, as we move through the project.
right. And Dennis, just clarify again, you said you need to know up front whether we're adding different roofing and flooring?
No, what I said, Butch, is we don't really have till April to figure that out. Meaning
Right.
if we're gonna take the floor and the roof and actually make it a part of the project, we can't really do that in April.
Right,
We certainly would need to be doing that well before April. Now, certainly like an outbuilding, yeah, we can figure that out later. It's not even attached.
I mean, maybe there are
Metal
some savings.
lockers, I mean, shoot, I can add those there, FF&E, no biggie. But
The
something
museum is the
that's
most
part of and
complicated part.
attached to the building, you know, we'd like to know sooner than April for sure.
Right.
Right, and I'll just add to that, as we are in the design development phase of developing the package to go out to bid, we do need to know those things much sooner than later. I would say even February is getting too late, because we have to start our detailing. We really need to be getting into that very soon. I know it's almost mid-January at this point, and we've got a lot to do and produce. So we appreciate the decision making and all of the factors that go into it. We know it's not easy, but we're trying to give you everything that you can make that decision with.
And I would say something like the museum can be a very complicated part to include as an alternate as far as what what parts are deducted and what parts are added, and they definitely need time to coordinate that through the set of drawings.
However, an outbuilding is just what it says. It's not attached to the building. It can be added at some point in time if there was funding for it to the tune of around 200,000.
Right.
Correct.
Butch,
Okay.
Butch, do you think the committee is ready to?
Yeah, so the motion on the floor is to add the floor and the roof and we would be at a price point at 12.3 million, I believe. Is that correct?
And change.
So that's what we would be voting. We would be voting both those items, but we would also be voting a budget to
Construction.
authorize the designers to move forward with.
You can't do that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this is to Dennis Ross and Company. So we are still gonna be a little short.
Right.
If we add both those items, you're going to have to rework the other items to get us into bottom line. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At some point, right?
Right,
But not today.
right. But if we're not listing them as an alternative, we're listing them as part of the project. That means the number calculations something's gotta change.
Correct.
Would I be correct on that?
I'd
Well-
like to try to rephrase your question so that we make sure we're understanding yours, Chief. I believe what you're asking us is that if we include the epoxy floor and the metal roof, that we are trying to get back down to 12 million? Is that what you were asking?
So it sounds like with what the mayor is committed,
Yeah,
we know what the
12
budget
million.
is, right?
Who's saying that?
Liz,
Liz, that
Sorry.
was my next question of Liz. We can't vote
We
money we
don't
don't
have
have.
12 million, so that's what I'm like.
Right. We
That's
can't
my
vote money we don't have.
correct. And if I may, I don't know that the vote is about the overall budget. It's about including the critical components that the chief has outlined, the roof and the floor, so that they are part of the base bid and not some alternate that may or may not be in the end construction. The challenge to the group is to find the funding to get us to that 12.3. I don't believe that is a voting point, but I could be mistaken in that.
I think you're right. What we're,
Right.
if
So if
we're,
we vote to just include them, then we include them, and that's just going to change the numbers that the design team has to work with to
That's
keep us
correct.
within budget.
That's my point. So, in light of that, I don't want to see them change anything else within the project to add these two items.
No.
I would amend or make a suggestion that the epoxy floor get included, and that's it.
Okay, is there a second on that amendment?
I think I have to accept it first.
Okay.
No, we can amend your.
Yeah, amend the motion.
Amend
I
your
assume
one.
it's a friendly amendment to a motion that I already put on the floor, which means that the person making that motion needs to accept it.
Right,
So I accept it.
perfect. Second,
She doesn't have it. David would have to accept it also.
right.
David, do you accept it?
David?
David M.
You're
We
muted.
can't hear you.
You're asking me if I accept to take the metal roofing off and just include the epoxy?
As the motion.
Yes.
Personally, I don't, to be honest with you. I think both of them are important, and I think we just, $131,000. I know we have to meet a budget, but you're gonna have to give me a little bit to think about it for a couple seconds. I mean, if I was forced to pick one, it would be the epoxy. Absolutely. I think we'd be foolish not to do the floor. But I think they're both a priority. In seeing that we have to try to reduce the budget down anyway, I mean, if we just say the epoxy is the item, we're all gonna still have to work down to get the budget, the cost down to our budget. So why not include the metal roof and try to work to get both items in and get to the budget that we need to be at? It's not like it's an additional $1 million. It's $131,000.
Well, another way of doing, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
No, that's all I had to say, David.
I was just gonna say, if you accept the amendment, we can vote on the epoxy, and now we have a full committee support of the epoxy, then you can make another motion to add the roof, and we can have another discussion about the roof, because we'll never be able to divide this in a way that would be that wouldn't take a while. So can we, if you, because you can make another motion, which I promise you I will second, about the roof, so that we can at least get.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine
Okay,
with
so
that.
you'll accept the motion?
okay,
I'll accept the motion.
all right. So the new motion that we're dealing with currently is to remove the roof
No.
from the original
No.
motion.
No, the motion has been amended to say, do we want to add the epoxy or not?
Oh,
Just
I
the
thought we
epoxy.
already,
Yeah, the amendment is, the
Amendment already
amendment
just to add
is,
the epoxy, correct. Okay,
It was
so is there
so
any more?
friendly that nobody noticed.
Right, yeah. Okay, so the motion on the floor is just to add the epoxy. So is there any more discussion on just adding the epoxy? Seeing none. We ready to vote? Get my little sheet here. Run down. David Singer, how do you vote on that?
I vote yes.
I vote yes. Mayor, how do you vote?
yes,
Yes. Chief Strahan?
Yes.
Liz Gilman? I didn't hear you.
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. Carol Collins?
Yes.
David Mascaratello?
Yes.
Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Gene Wall?
Yes,
And Amy McMahon?
Yes.
And Jen Strunston.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, the motion carries. The epoxy floor is in. Is there any further motions?
I'll make the motion to have the discussion about the metal roofing.
I second.
Okay. Okay, David Singer seconds. All right. Discussion, go ahead.
So it doesn't matter to me if we need to, either way, I think it's an important item. And I think I don't want to say we're being foolish, but we need to look at the long-term cost of maintaining the building. And, I think where the roof is, as the mayor described it, I think this is an important feature for $131,000. And I know that we have to look at the overall budget, and I understand we have to seriously get down to where we need to be. But I think it's an important item, and whether we do it as part of the main budget or it's an alternative. If it's the alternative, I think it has to be number one. But I think we really need to consider adding this back in, or making it the strong alternate number one. I think it's an important item.
Okay.
If I
Any
can,
further discussion on adding the roof back in? Go ahead, Steve.
Just as a point of clarification, we have EPDM over most of the building. And well, maybe 60%, maybe more than that. What is the expected life of EPDM?
That's in the nature of, I believe, 20 years, or somewhere thereabouts.
So the shingles is about 20 years as well.
Depending on the manufacturer, that's kind of where their lifetimes have been getting. We used to be able to get a 30, 35 year, and they're kind of dropping down.
And metal roofs are all over the, I mean, are we talking about we'd be talking about a standing seam?
It would be a standing seam metal roof, presumably with a baked on finish that has high durability. Those are the types of metal roofs we've done before, and we have described that adequately enough for the estimator. It looks like Steve may have dropped out while I was trying to answer.
He's
And
spinning.
it's on a hill.
Yeah, he's spinning.
Fire Chief, did you have something to say?
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
yeah, again, I agree with what David said. The only concern that I have is we're over budget now. I don't want any more changes to the building because we're putting a metal roof on. For example, I don't want to lose a bathroom because we're going to add the metal roof. The budget is what it is. We are already over budget. We're already going to have to make some changes. And yeah, it's only 130, but 130 could
Mhm.
it could be something significant. And I don't want if the architect feels that when they do their budget and that can be included in the budget, I'm sure they'll put it in there. But I don't want to sacrifice anything else that they've already designed for the sake of that roof.
Okay. Go ahead, David.
I mean, I would agree with that. I don't want to see, none of us want to see anything else being sacrificed. And I certainly wouldn't want to see something internal that has to do with the functionality or of the fire personnel. I just think it's an important item that we just don't want to forget and that we should look at and keep on the back of our minds. I certainly don't want to start seeing things functional disappear because of the roof. But I also think we have to look at as a community. I mean, we build a fire station once every 50 or 60 years. That's what my attitude is. We don't build a fire station every 10 years or when we feel like it. We do it every 50, 60 or 70 years. And I know we have a budget, but the $10 million budget at the beginning, I'm sorry, but in my mind, that was fictional. It was a number that was drawn out of a hat from the former mayor, and I'm in that group, and now we're stuck dealing with it. I mean, we need to do this fire station right. We don't do it often. That's my attitude.
Hey, Mayor?
The reality is we are dealing with a budget that is at whatever we discussed, 10.1 million. And David is exactly right. We're at that 10.1 million based on a fiction. He was advised at that time we needed a $12 million fire station. Now we have the ability, and the discussion is around a $12 million fire station that functions. If we can get the money to fund $12 million. So I'm just making that point to say we've known a long time what it's going to cost us. And when we went to the council for the additional money a while back, we didn't know we might have some money fall out of the sky. But it did. And I consider us lucky in that respect, at least for some portion of this $12 million that we know we need. So that's all I need to say about that. A metal roof is not the roof I want to die on or the hill I want to die on, especially if we can live without it. I'm buoyed by Gene's explanation with regard to planning and construction, and they do advise me, and I just received some advice today, so I appreciate that. And you know, you can always keep it in your capital budget. But again, the capital budget isn't just something that we can play with. We need to constantly manage our borrowing capability. So.
Yeah. Any other discussion on, yes, David?
This is a question for Neil. If we vote if we vote the 12.3 and we go all the way to bidding and we only have 11.5 and the numbers actually come in at 12.3 to build this fire station, and at that moment in time we only have 11.5, don't we come back and start cutting things out of the fire station?
So the law says that you can't sign a contract that you can't fully fund.
But that's not bidding. That's bidding is not the signing. I'm just talking about
That's correct.
Okay.
No, that's correct. So if we got to the point and bids came in over, we would go back to the drawing board. We would, from a point of process, we would reject the bid. We would redesign to get under budget, and we put it back out to bid again.
Why wouldn't we at that point go try to find more money instead?
Okay, that is an alternative plan that you could do, but you would have, by statute, you would have 30 days, at which point the contractor would have the right to walk away from his bid without penalty. The contractor by statute has to hold his bid to the awarding authority for not more than, I believe it's 30 days. And the city would have to make a decision to award or not to award within 30 days of the bid.
Hey. Yeah, go ahead, David.
One more. So Katrina, if we were to go that way, then you have to redesign at that point, right? You'd have to redesign the project. If we only had 11.5 million at that point, and that was all we had, you'd have to redesign the project, correct?
If the bids came in at 12 point something and all the city had, that is my understanding, yes, we'd have to go back to the drawing board.
Thank you.
I did want to add two things, and I'm sorry I have to rush through this. One point about the roof. As a metal roof, it could be something that happens in a later budget. For example, you build the building now with the asphalt shingles, and in 5 years, you put a metal roof on when you've got the budget. So that was one point. And the other point is I have a class that I'm teaching at 6 p.m. So I have to get myself ready and off the call. But I think I hopefully have explained enough to the group, and certainly Adam and Dennis can pick up where I'm dropping off here. Any questions that people have about the estimate and where we're going right now. So I thank everybody for their time today. I do have to run, but I also wanted to bring up the one notice about working with DPW. Neil, you had asked me to mention that under new business, just to make sure that we're on board with how we are accomplishing that with our geotechnical engineer coming out to the site, potentially the civil engineer as well. They expressed interest in getting themselves on site when those test pits were out there. So if you can talk about that briefly, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, we have a tentative schedule lined up with Marlo and Sam to dig test pits on site either Wednesday or Thursday of next week, weather dependent.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody. I'm
Thank
sorry
you,
I have to run.
Katrina. All righty.
Katrina,
Take
thank
care.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so the discussion is adding the roof. Is there any more discussion on adding the roof to the main project? Seeing, yes, go ahead.
I just want to weigh in and just say, I mean, I agree with everything that the mayor and Dave Muscarello just said about the, the budget. And you all know how I feel about that, that this is a made up number that we inherited.
Sorry, Jeff,
so-
I'm in the meeting. I don't know why the door was locked.
So, I do think I support this motion to keep the roof, but I think that it's not worth, hanging our hats on right now. I think we can push off that, and tonight go forward, just supporting putting the floor in there and get things rolling, so.
Any more? Go ahead, David.
I mean, I don't have a problem withdrawing the motion if we can do that. It's fine. It's not this isn't a game breaker for me. I just think it's an important factor and we should consider it down the line. The investment, that's all. So I don't have a problem, doing that if that's the case.
I was going to suggest that you do that.
Okay.
I would,
So you
I
wanna
would withdraw.
Go ahead. Do you want to withdraw the motion?
That's fine. I'll withdraw the motion.
Second on the withdrawal?
And I accept as the seconder.
Okay. So we're all set with that piece. All right, the next item on the agenda is the project schedule. Neil Joy, so what I'd like it to explain to us is when do we need a vote on a budget to submit to both you and the design team?
So we need to come to an agreement and fully release Dennis so that he and his crew can move forward. If we are accepting of the $12 million number that was presented in the estimate tonight, plus the 100 and change, or 160, I guess it is, and change that comes from the epoxy floor, then we would be revising our construction budget to 12.17 million, if I have done my math correctly. Round numbers again, but they work better with commas and zeros than I do with pennies.
Okay, and how much exactly do we have in money? We can't vote money we don't have, so how much money do we have for
With-
construction?
If we were to take the 11.5 and add, I'm sorry, the 10.1, add the 500 and,
No.
No, that's already added.
okay,
You have
What am I missing?
11.1.
We have 11.1.
No. No, Neil squished some money out of the budget. We have 11.5. If the mayor's giving us $1 million and we have another 400 from the budget, and we have 11.5.
From
So
non-construction.
so we're 600,000 and change.
Now the
Sure.
second.
Sure.
So what we could do, if we so chose, is we could direct. We have $615,000 in FF&E, which could be deferred to construction with an understanding of the city and the committee that would have to be replaced at a later time, fiscal year 24 or whatever, or funded through capital at a later date. And that would put us where we need to be overall for the budget at 12.17 and change.
Okay. So I think we would need a vote to move that money from that line item to construction.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, for discussion.
Right, okay, so discussion on it. So Neil, we would need the chief and Neil to explain what that would mean.
Yes, thank you.
So essentially, it would entail, we would just make a simple budget adjustment on our project budget right now. we would transfer the $615,000 that was earmarked and tagged for FF&E. And we would put that under construction. So we'd move our construction budget from 11.5 to 12.1 million and change. And with no other changes, that would effectively get us to the $12.1 million number that we need to be at for construction. And that would mean that items like, and I'll read you the list of things we had earmarked. Under FF&E and technology, we had furniture and loose equipment. We had the kitchen equipment. We had the self-contained breathing apparatus machine. We have radio tower and communications equipment. And then we had various technology, 15 PCs, network equipment, wireless internet access, a phone system, printers and devices. Those would have to be funded through outside either additional cash infusion or funded through capital budgets, operating budgets in fiscal year 24. Yeah, fiscal year 24.
Okay, now would the chief explain how that does or does not affect him?
Looks like
Go on.
he's low on bandwidth, so I'm not sure if he can even hear you.
Um,
Can you hear me?
yeah, can hear
Yes, we
you.
can.
Yeah.
Obviously, it would be a concern if these items weren't able to be restored. We are actively pursuing grants. One grant we're pursuing right now is the air compressor, air filling station. We feel confident we'll probably get it, but you never know. We could be denied. But we're hoping to offset some of those costs. They will need to be made up somewhere down the road. Without that, you know, the old furniture that we have would get moved into the new firehouse. So I think it's a challenge, but yeah, I guess that's all I'm going to say on that. Thanks.
So you feel it's a challenge, but it's doable if we move that money into construction?
Yeah, I think so. I've made a commitment that every grant that we apply for within the next couple of years, everything is going to be, every single little grant from, you know, a few thousand all the way up is going to be used to try to capture some of these items. But we're still probably going to need help down the road.
Right. Yes, Mayor. You're muted.
I wanted to introduce the EOPS conversation here just as another option for potential another potential option for funding. Even though, you know, it's not a for sure option. So there is the Executive Office of Public Safety, and Butch and I have been working on this, approaching them because they do from time to time fund certain things. I don't think they do a lot of brick and mortar funding, but they do equipment funding. So I have said that I will write to them and begin a discussion, and thanks to Butch and people that he knows, we have people that I can go directly to. So I certainly will do that sooner rather than later. I don't know, I can't recall, and Butch, you may be able to recall. I don't think we're talking about grants. I think we're talking about direct aid.
Correct.
Yeah. So if they were to say yes, then we would have some money to cover. And, you know, now that we are entertaining this discussion regarding FF&E, I have a better idea what I might ask them for. So,
So the rationale for moving the FF&E is to get us to a budget point that we're actually talking about tonight so that we can vote money that we actually have to release the design team to move forward. That's the purpose of this
and
discussion.
so I don't know if we need Fernando to weigh in on whatever those technology items are and their impact if they weren't there. I'm not sure if he even heard what they might be.
Oh, I heard.
I didn't see you on the screen until now, so.
Yeah. No, I definitely heard everything. As far as like I heard the 15 computers and things like that.
Yeah.
For me, buying those items, especially computers, you want to buy them closer to when you exactly need them than now.
Mhm.
I think that would be doable, and there was something that we could do within my department to make that work as well. So.
Fernando, just to be clear, we'd also be talking about the IT infrastructure, all the, switches, racks, wireless, phones, printers, peripherals, any IT related items is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I was looking at the budget as we were talking about this, and just thinking about different ways of how we could make that work. As for example, I would need to talk to the chief what you guys meant by a phone system. Right now, we have a phone system that it's VoIP, that is used throughout the city, fire, police. So I assume that you're talking more about the wiring that's involved with that and other things. But as far as all the switching, I don't know if I could handle that myself under my operating budget. There will be some money that comes in. I mean, I could put it in. It's up to the mayor to approve it or not, but that's something that I would need to really look at now because I do replace that equipment on a 5-year schedule, pretty much. So I would need to take a look at to see where the fire department is now.
Yes, Mayor.
I didn't have anything to say. I was just nodding to what he was saying.
Oh, okay. All
We
right.
have, I think part of what he was saying is we have a phone system that will transfer from where it is now to where it would be needed later, but this other stuff is stuff that you tend to buy brand new at the time or
Yeah.
plan on a little ahead of time.
Some of the equipment will be able to be moved.
Mhm.
Some of them you can't. Right now, some of the equipment we have in the temporary.
Yeah.
So it's, we can't close one down for the other one. You have to build the other one, the new station first.
Right. Any more discussion on moving that money over from FF&E into construction?
Butch, the only other thing I'd like to point out is the radio and communications elements associated with the new station, because you can't occupy and operate a station that you can't communicate out of. So
Right.
that is a relatively important piece of the infrastructure. And honestly, we haven't really done the legwork yet. We've got $100,000 in the budget allocated for that. And we're hoping we don't have to spend it. But we're also talking about, signalization on Main Street and other items that would have to occur outside the budget as well. So it's just something to think about. That's a real obstacle that has to be overcome later if we take it out now.
Right.
Everything else I think we can live with. Old furniture, rooms that temporarily would not be furnished at all. All of that stuff we can deal with. Communications, we really can't.
Yeah, and the good news about the communications is that the location is in direct line of sight of the radio setup on Shelburne Mountain. So we don't have to worry about getting too high up and to get the signal out. It's line of sight and should be fairly easy and cost effective to do.
No repeaters.
And I want to make sure that we I may have lost track of you from the initial motion. We are voting to move the whole 615. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
Which I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand why we have to take this vote to have the architect move forward. We know that we're over budget. We know that we're trying to get down to where we need to be. There's expectations that we're gonna save money with site work and maybe other things. So what do we actually have to vote on to have the architect move forward?
A budget. We have to give them a budget.
To design too.
Yeah. Otherwise, they really can't do anything until we tell them how much money they have to work with.
So
And we can't tell them money that we don't have.
yeah,
we
so
have to
no, I understand that part of it. We're gonna do a vote on a design to what they presented to us tonight, correct?
Right, with the added
But
floor.
that doesn't mean that it's not gonna change over the next couple months with cost savings. So we're not any, but why do we have to exclude? Why do we have to
Well-
exclude the FF and E if we know the budget's 12.3? We know it's gonna change. What's the difference?
Well, we can't vote money we don't have, and we don't have,
12.3.
without taking that money out. Plus, if it comes in lower, we can build that money back into FF&E.
Wait,
It doesn't preclude us from building it back, but we can't vote on money we don't have.
But whether it stays the line, okay, I understand. So we need to vote. We need to vote on excluding that and
Moving
be
it
at
over to
the
construction.
12.3, which
Well,
is what our budget is.
Correct.
But there's no reason why it could be added. Some of the 600,000 could be added back. We just don't know right now.
that's correct.
Correct. Yeah, correct. We can always add back. We just can't add forward with something we don't have.
So it seems pretty cut and dry to me.
It is.
It's all going to be fluid anyway for the next
Yeah.
month or so anyway. So
Right. So are we ready to vote to move that money over? I'll go ahead, Fernando.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I was wondering if Neil could tell me exactly what not now, but on an email or something, what we would be removing. So I could weigh it
Sure.
and think about it.
I'll answer that for him.
David had his hand up a little while ago. David Singer, are you satisfied with what you're hearing?
Yes, David now, I think, David Muscaratello now understands that this is the moment to vote the moving, and then we could do other things like, thank you.
Okay. So it's time to vote to move the FF&E over to construction. So David Singer,
Yes.
Rich Hawkins, yes. Mayor,
Yes.
Chief Strahan,
Yes.
Ms. Gilman,
Yes.
Carol Collins.
Yes.
Yes, all right. David M.
yes,
Steve Draculich.
Yes.
Good. Gene Wall.
Yes.
Amy McMahon
Yes.
and Jen. I'm stuck.
Yes. Did you skip Carol?
No, she answered.
Sorry, I didn't hear it.
Okay, so the motion passes. So we've added how much? 600 and what is it on the budget?
15.
$15
About that.
to construction, which
615.
gives us
615. 615.
615, which now Neil gives us an exact budget for construction.
12.15 million.
12.15 million. Okay. So now the next question is, do we want to take a vote to authorize 12.1 million, these numbers, for constructing the project?
So moved.
second,
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none. Go into the vote. David Singer,
Yes.
Butch Hawkins, yes. Mayor,
Yes,
Chief Strahan,
Yes.
Liz Gilman,
Yes.
thank you. Carol Collins,
Yes.
okay, David Mascaratello,
Yes.
Steve Draculich. Steve?
I'm sorry, I've been fading in and out. I don't even know what we're voting on.
We're voting on a budget of 12.1 million for construction.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Where am I? Gene Wall,
Yes,
Amy,
Yes.
and Jen.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
one Hail Mary and a touchdown.
Big time. Big time. Okay. Pre-qualification subcommittee report. Neil, do you have anything? Or the chairman? Sorry, that would be Steve.
We are being notified that there is another meeting that needs to happen at 6 p.m. and we will have to get off of this, as I recall. The WebEx is needed at 6 p.m. for another commission, and I believe we are at 6:06.
Okay, so
We either need to.
let's move these other items to the next meeting and
Move to adjourn.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes,
Aye.
opposed?
Good meeting.
And sorry
Abstention?
about that. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank
Much
you, everyone. We
appreciated.
appreciate it.
That
Thank
was
you,
really
everyone.
hard. Really hard.
Happy
Thank you,
birthday,
everybody.
Dennis Ross.
Henry.